And then yesterday they said, "Oh, well, we viewed such and such."
Can I pause there? That is a great question. Just say that again.
I said, "Have you?"
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Complete Agent Podcast, where each week we get together to talk all things estate agency. As ever, I'm joined by my industry colleagues. My name's David Warburton, by the way, but I'm joined by my industry colleagues, Mr. James Kendall and Mr. Ian Storey, all-round legends and fantastic estate agents. Lads, how's your week been? I think we'll go to Ian, who is looking very tanned because he only spends 1 week a year in the UK. How's your week been, mate?
Week's been very good, thanks, chaps. I think we've agreed 6 sales since the last podcast. About 4 or 5 listings. It's really, really good across the board. Sold our £3.5 million this week, which only came on 3 weeks ago, and we've sold it for way over the marketing price. We had 4 offers on it and 2 competing bids. And frankly, I couldn't believe it. I mean, the owner can't believe it either. I spoke to him, he was like, I can't believe it. And we put it on thinking we'd get 1 viewing in the first month and we'd be happy. And we had loads of interest. I've also been dealing with a high profile sports star on it, which has been quite interesting. That particular sports star isn't buying it, but I had some interesting conversations with them, which has made it all a bit more fun. And the owner got a photograph with him outside the house and stuff. So that made it quite fun. Although I didn't meet him because I was away in Barcelona last weekend. Oh,
so nice! One of those houses where you're doing all the viewings on it, and then you're away.
Gutted. I'm absolutely gutted I didn't meet this particular person because he's a bit of a legend. But anyway, all good. A couple of fallers, so 2-3 fallers. One at 1.25 yesterday, 2%. That was quite a big one. The buyer didn't know there was a public footpath. Haven't read the details properly. Didn't know there was a public footpath going through the field. So pulled out. And a couple of other fallers. We have had 2 or 3 fallers, but overall, pipeline is very healthy. We are still on track to do our bonus target at the end of the year. We've had a great number of exchanges. So all is good, really, chaps. How about you, JK?
We've had I think as I said before, not the greatest month in the world on sales. However, we're having a good month on listings. Really good listings, really strong listings. We've had a funny week on vals as well, which we'll talk about when we get into the pod. I think we were just talking about that off air, and expectations. And some of the vals I've been to this week have just been painful, to be honest. I've wanted to pull my teeth out in front of people. It's been that painful. But no, otherwise, look, we're having a bit of a tougher spell for a couple of weeks, but it's what happens sometimes. You just have to get on with it. You have a few fallers. You have a not so good sales month, but what it means is there's a good one round the corner. And we're putting loads on. We've got loads of really good listings as well. We've averaged 2 vals a day in the diary as well, like booked in. So, we've got plenty to go at. 10,000 market updates have gone out. We're starting to get some calls off the back of those as well. So, I'm although I probably sound a little bit downbeat, I'm upbeat about things, and it's the old classic. You follow the process, and the proceeds will come. So it's one of those. So it sounds a little bit depressive for me this week, but
hey, JK, we all got through those periods, mate. I'm having a good run at the minute, but as we all know, something will change, and there'll be a period where you lose some listings and a load will fall through.
You did just mention there, I know you glossed over it a little bit, but you mentioned yourself there, and you've had 2 or 3 fallers as well. So it happens. JK's had an incredible run, and he'll be fine, absolutely fine with everything that's going on.
We had to say 6 months of absolutely killing it. And I think, if you're doing a post-mortem on where we're at, because I analyse it, and I don't just go, it's the market. But ultimately where we're at is we hadn't put enough new stuff on. Not enough new stuff had signed up, and it's just sometimes it's one of those. I look back, could we have done anything different? Not really, to be honest. If we'd have dropped our pants on fee, we probably could have taken a couple on. But when you're committed to doing what we're doing, I'd rather lose out on 15, 20 grand here and there to for the bigger picture. So anyway, that's been my week. David, how's your week been, mate?
Yes, it's continues to go well. I think I was saying to you guys before, very, very strong month. We've had a very strong start to the year, which is great. And I'm quite pleased with where we're at. The one thing that is looking light on paper right now across the board is instructions, but it doesn't tell the full story. I've got loads going on behind the scenes, loads that are in photography and things that are done. So we're going to have a burst towards the end of the month where we go bang, 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 bang. Houses come on the market. We've got loads of offers kicking around. We've done loads of sales this month. Decent exchange month as well. So yeah, all good. Same sort of thing as you, JK, with the challenges on valuations. I think there's dare I say, I don't know whether it's unrealistic vendor. I don't know if that's the harshest thing to say there, because I just think they don't know. And we had a brief chat about it before we came on, and we said we might as well press record, and it'll be something that we can talk about. But yeah, there are challenges in the market in that respect. I think people wanting too much money, and obviously we speak to our TCA members, and a few things will get thrown around in the group, and I think they're suffering some of the same challenges. Some people are going through spells where they're just not selling things and having to do consistent seller reviews and running out of things to say. And ultimately, it's a market issue, and I think you've just got to educate your market, haven't you?
And it's price as well. People say, "Well, I'm not sure it's the price." It definitely is.
It's the price.
If it's marketed right, as long as the marketing's there. I mean, I put a post up on LinkedIn yesterday. We completed the sale of a house that had been on the market on and off with various different agents for 7 years, and I think we were agent number 5 or 6. And again, ultimately, it was down to marketing initially as well, but also equally down to price. This house started out in the market at 1.3 million and completed at just over 800,000. It was actually. And I remember at one of our masterminds, I was actually on the phone to the client outside, and they were looking to emigrate, and we were on at 900 at the start, which I still thought was way too high. And I remember saying to him, "Look, how badly do you want this move to happen? Are you going to stay here? Are you going to wait another 7 years, or do we need to rip the band-aid off now and go offers over 800? You think you've lost 500-600 grand, but you haven't, because you've never had it. The time you've been on the market, no one offered you that money. If somebody had offered you that money and exchanged, different story, but you haven't. So, the reality is that the market and your expectations don't align. So what we need to do is set this price, and then that way we'll get it gone. You'll move on to the next chapter of your life, and that's it. And he emailed me yesterday actually and just said, "Look, I just want to thank you so much for your honesty and your sterling work," he said, "because when everyone else was blowing smoke up my backside, you were the one that brought me back down to earth."
Yeah, well, that's the truth. I mean, this is it. The market's the market. I always say when I go and meet people who are already on the market with someone else, what I always say to them is, let's pretend that you've never been on the market and you've never had a valuation. Let's take the price off your listing and just simply look at what it's doing right now and why it might not be attracting attention. So let's solve that issue first and give value that way. So that way, because we've all been to them, by the way, where and I've had a few actually in the last sort of 6 to 12 months. You give loads of advice, and then they take that advice and just stick with their existing agent and use it and maybe go on to sell. So one way sometimes around that is this sort of tactic I find, where you can just say, let's take the price off, pretend I've never met you before, pretend you've never had a valuation, pretend you've never been on the market. Let's just look at your marketing, right? So who is the target market, first of all, for a property of your type? Are we marketing to that target audience, first of all? And it might be that it's going to be a young family showcasing an amazing kitchen dining room with the bifolds and the entertainers sort of section of the garden and all that sort of thing. Are we really showing that off? Are we leading with it? Are we showing that off on social media and all that sort of stuff? So do the pictures reflect that? Does the staging reflect that? Have you got a video and all that? So you go through all that and you plant the seeds of doubt, obviously, because you want to make sure that the marketing that they have is representative of what the house is and, of course, aimed at the target audience. So that's a great starting point. And once you've done all that, you can then say, right, let's put the price back on and look at it now and say, right, well, look at the Rightmove filters. It's not on a filter for a start. And let's look at your price per square foot for the other detached homes in the area. That's what's happening right now. So you've kind of brought it all together. So you need to have A, a break from the market, B, a refresh on your marketing, and C, we need a price realignment. And that's kind of how I've been approaching the ones where I go and see people who've been on the market for a while. And other things we've had, like I was just telling you before, I had a valuation last night, and it was it's a beautiful house, really, really nice house, very, very unique, and there's a couple of reasonable comps for it, but all the price per square foot and everything takes it in and around that 1 million mark. So we did the data, and then my usual question at the end of it is, so what are your hopes and dreams for it? What would you like to achieve? Because you must have an idea in your head. Well, we didn't really want to tell you that. We just want to see what you think. And what they're looking for is, if he says the number we want, we will instruct this guy.
Yeah.
Well, I've just told you the data value is in and around 1 million. You've got an amazing garden, and you have amazing fixtures and fittings. So subjectively, someone might pay £50,000 to £100,000 more for that. We're at that end of the market. Equally, you've got 4 bedrooms, but 2 of them are quite small. So that might be a drawback for a lot of people. So we are talking about subjective elements. If you're asking me what it's worth on paper, I'm telling you it's 1 million, because that's what the price per square foot is. But subjectively, you might get up to like 1.1, something like that. But again, that's not me saying that. We'd have to see how it goes out there. Okay, yeah. Well, we're hoping for 1.25. I'm like, right, okay, we're getting somewhere now. But we get you, and they really want to use me, by the way. I've been recommended by 2 people. Would you take it at 1.25? We're not in a rush.
We're not in a rush.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Will you do it for 1% as well?
Yeah, you'll need to not be in a rush at that number.
Yeah.
Because I can put you on the market, and we can do a seller review in 2028. But it's those are the conversations that I'm having a lot of at the moment. There's expectations there from owners that are perhaps beyond what the market would suggest, and it's just an educational process, really. You've got to tell them how the market is. And again, before we came on, I was talking to you a little bit about what I've got in my proposal in terms of pointing out what's happening in the market, and I think it's really important to deliver that. Just on a side note as well, just not going off on a tangent, but I had another one like a couple of weeks ago that I valued, and it's a really nice house, like an executive style home, and got on really well with her. And then at the end, we went through it, and I said it's probably worth in around, according to the data, 675 to 700. Ooh, could you put on the report 750? I'm like, why? And then she informed me that it's a bitter divorce. I said, right,
950.
I can only do. Yeah, I can only do what I can only tell the truth, basically. Anyway, so I did the report anyway, and the ex rang me the day after and started asking it for it to say a different figure. And I thought, oh, for goodness sake! So look, I said, I can't do all that. I said, I've put my report in, and that's that. And it went to the solicitors. Anyway, she rang me up saying, I really want to use you, but the solicitors have said we have to use such a body. I went, oh, I'm gutted. I'm gutted not to be in the middle of that bitter divorce.
Do you know what though? In those scenarios, because I've had a few of those recently, and I've just said, look, if you can't agree on the value, and it doesn't really matter whether you agree with what the agent said, if that's the case, what you need to do is instruct a RICS chartered surveyor, pay for a valuation for £250, like a bank does, and you'll get the RICS value. It's not down to subjectivity. It is down to what a chartered surveyor would value your house at. And if you can't agree on price, then there's your option. And that's it. See you later, hun. Enjoy. I've had a few tricky vals as well. And it's not helped by other agents as well, because, I'm sure it's only where I am in the country, but there's a lot of agents out there overvaluing and undercutting on fees. Does that happen where you guys are?
No, not here, mate.
No, it must just be a thing near me. There's been a few of that recently.
It's not been happening for the last 25 years either. So,
No, is it not? It must be a
Well,
new
I
thing.
am.
It's a fairly new thing around here anyway. But I went to see a lady the other day, and she did that, Dave. It was like the guessing game. You know, she said, well, I want to know what you think. And I was like, well, this is not, this isn't the game, you know, because you get 4 agents around, you get 4 different opinions. And here's what the data says. Here's what somebody is prepared to pay for your house in varying different conditions. I think, you know, looking at what we've got in front of us here, it could be between this number and this number. You know, we're talking 3-4% between the two. And, you know, what, like you just said, Dave, you know, what would you hope to achieve? Well, I want to know what you think. What you think? Well, it doesn't matter what I think because I'm not buying the house. You know, it's and it's very much like you said, Dave. If this guy says the right number, I'll instruct him.
Yeah, it's really that.
And I'm not interested. Like, end of the day, there's so many clients that I've got and people lined up that value what I say and are on board with how things work. It's not a guessing game, you know. Don't get me wrong, like you say, it's subjective. You know, just because the data says 1.1 doesn't mean it isn't one. You know, I had one recently where the data was like 1.2 million and we sold it at 1.38.
Yeah.
You know, we got offers over 1.25. You know, wind behind us. A couple of people wanted it. Happy days. Brilliant.
I think on the flip side of that, JK, as well, sometimes it goes the other way. Like I valued one the other day, a couple of nights ago, and all the data suggested it's like 625. And actually, I said to them, but to be honest, looking at other comps in the area and stuff, it doesn't really back it. And they agreed because it needs a level of work as well. So it was one of those. So if you did all the work, it could be 625. But the subjective part then goes the other way, doesn't it? You know, somebody's going to need to do a certain level of work to this property, and they're going to have to factor that in. And if we look at properties that have had, been on the market with similar levels of work, you know, this is the kind of number. And it was actually closer to 525. So, and like I said, they agreed. So it can go both ways. Just while that's in my head as well, I always think that with renovations, you know, this is useful, I think, for a lot of people that go out there. But the renovations, like if you go to a property that is dated, so let's just say you get invited out to a property that's got an older couple in it. They've lived in there for 25 years and they've not decorated it since maybe the mid to late 90s, something like that. So it's got the old kitchens and bathrooms and things like that. So it's not quite got the avocado bathrooms and all that, but it's quite dated and it's obvious that anybody who comes in would want to change it all. You then go into the next street and it's the same design house, but that house is an absolute rundown. You know, it's not really, I won't say not habitable, but it's like, oh, there's no one living in it and it's really, really old and a lot worse than the one that you've just been in. The argument sometimes, have you got me there, Ian?
Yeah.
You've got, yeah. So the argument sometimes
takes a while.
Right, okay. So the argument sometimes from the owner that you've met will say, oh yeah, but that one there that sold for, say, 700,000, oh, that needed an awful lot of work. I say, you're right, it did, but the principle is exactly the same because that one needed an awful lot of work. That yours, someone's going to come into it and yes, you can live in it, it's habitable, but they're going to want to do the same things. They're going to want to replace the kitchen. They're going to want to replace the bathrooms. They're going to want to decorate everywhere. So actually, it still involves stripping all your wallpaper off and taking your bathrooms out and your kitchens out. So it doesn't really matter at what level. If we're talking structural stuff, that's a bit different. But on the face of cosmetic improvements, it's the same, which is why
I think there's an argument to say it's better for most buyers if it's more data, you know, because they feel like they're not buying something that's sort of kind of done.
Yeah.
You know, they know they're buying something that I think it's easier in many ways if it's
absolutely.
More data.
Yeah, because you're starting from back to brick and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Go on, where are you going with this, Dave?
That was it. I've done my bit.
Oh, right.
What was I saying? I don't know. That was my point.
So what I do when it comes to vals, when we come up with things that need work, is I use obviously Data Loft, and I look at the pound per square foot in the area. And what I do, and I said to you guys before, is I look at the minimum someone's prepared to pay for that house, pound per square foot, the average someone's prepared to pay, and then the maximum. And, you know, when it comes to doing the comps, we look at, right, okay, well, we know the house is 2,000 square feet. Now, the minimum someone's prepared to pay for a house that needs loads of work doing based on the land registry data is £200 a square foot. So 2,000 square feet, that brings us out 400. Somebody else is prepared to pay, I don't know, the average is 300. That brings us out at 600. The maximum someone's prepared to pay is, I don't know, 400. I mean, this is, I'm just throwing numbers out in the air because I can't do the maths that quick in my head, but 800. So it gives you an idea of, and what I then also do is pick out those houses that are on Rightmove, they're sold comparables, and go, right, well, look, this is what's sold at £200 a square foot, needs everything doing to it. This is an average house that is move-inable, probably want to do things over time. But this house at the top is the Instagram house with, you know, the super kitchen, the pool in the garden, the AstroTurf, like the creme de la creme. I had this literally yesterday. And I said, well, look, you know, your house almost sits at the kind of upper echelons between the average and the max. And that's why I think we should probably pitch at this sort of money. And they just looked at me and they like in disbelief because they'd had other valuations. And she said to me, she goes, I must say, you're far more professional than anybody else I've met. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she just said, well, just you know, because she was, again, one of those where she was like, well, you know, what do you think? What's the number? And I said, well, look, let's get it measured so we know where the house actually is size-wise. But based on this and what we think it is roughly, it could be this or this. And depending on the size and what comes back, then it's a conversation. There's no pressure for us to set a price today. You know, this is the ballpark we're going to be in, but this is what it could be, you know, based on... Yeah, but again, going back to it, how does that fit in with what, you know, you'd hope to achieve? Well, you know, we'd hope to get 650, 675. You know, I said, well, I think, you know, we could probably get 7. You know, it's that good. And I think the element of subjectivity of the plot and stuff, I think we could definitely get 7. And, you know, based on what else I've sold another house literally in quarter of a mile, and this has got a bigger plot and it's better. So, you know, arguably, I think it would get 7 easy. Just on another thing as well, it's frustrating, but it does happen all the time. When you go out, Chloe went out to one yesterday, and it was the classic. Other agent had said like 50 grand more, half the fee. The seller's like, well, you know, they say they've got buyers and this, that, and the other. And I just, you know, she was telling me, and I just said, do you know what? Sometimes you just need to let them ones go, because it wasn't a house that, you know, really kind of, you know, it'd been not even refurbished. They'd recarpeted a couple of rooms, and, you know, sort of tried to sell it to us as refurbished. And it just, it's not us. Like, there's been a few recently I've gone to, even bigger stuff, houses I've gone to that have been probably 1.5, and I've gone to it and I've just thought, I don't really want to market this. And I just, you know, maybe I'm becoming a bit of a snob, but
no,
it's
a good business strategy. That's a good business strategy, I think.
Well, the thing is, I'd rather have a mint 500 or 600 grander paying 2% that looks brilliant, like really well kept, modern kitchen, this, that, and the other, than I would have an absolute shit box at like £1 million that, you know, all the carpets are threadbare and the client's unrealistic, and, you know, do you know what I mean? Just, we've all been to them, and I just think, do you know what? That generally the people that have got pride in their homes are the kind of clients that resonate with our brand and what we do. And, you know, you go and you start talking about, you know, because obviously, you know, we've now got a dedicated stylist in house. You know, we've now got the props and everything ready, and we're going out and saying, right, well, look, you know, this is your stylist appointment. This is what we're gonna do to help, you know, sell the house in the best light and get the best possible price for it. And then, you know, when someone turns around to you, which I had this week, and says, well, I don't need a stylist in this house, you know, it's a home, it's lived in. Like, I'm thinking, I think you fucking do, babe. Like, I really do think you need some help, because otherwise, but then equally, they're not really our client.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we've talked about that before. When you set up, and you are trying to become something, you can't be all things to all people. There are people out there that will take those types of houses. I collaborate with a couple of agents, and and often say, I went to one the other week, and to be honest with you, the guy is an older chap, and he was really, really lovely, and he lived in this bungalow, and I went because I've been recommended to him, and it was it was a mess. There was so much stuff everywhere. I felt sorry for him, but I can't help him because of the situation I've got with my business and where we're at, and we're really, really busy. But I knew the guy that could. So I'd said to him, I think you need to get a colleague of mine out in the industry who will really help you with this house. And what he does, my friend, a colleague in the industry, he's got people who will just come in and take everything out for this guy, and be able to really help him with it. And he operates at that end of the market in that particular area. So it just made sense. But there's no point in me taking that on and giving 50% service and not being able to help this man. So
but you can't sell something you're not passionate about. Like the whole reason we took our business to where it is now is because I wanted to sell homes that I would aspire to live in. You know, whether they are 300 grand or whether they're 3.5 million. You know, it's about having the right homes that. I mean, don't get me wrong. Not every house has to be like a bougie, brand new kitchen, this, that, and the other.
No,
but. You know, even if a house is, you know, because I've had some really lovely clients that have lived in their house for 20 years. I mean, they've got some at the moment. They've been in their house 25 years and it's immaculate. It's cared for. Like the gardens are beautiful. The house is beautiful inside, but it's just clean, tidy, well cared for and kept. And they value good service and, you know, they value good marketing. But for me, what I can't stand, and again, apologies for the language if you listen to this and you've got little ears, but I've been frustrated this week where some of the homes that I've gone to, and they're only really that sort of value because they've been in there so long. They haven't been maintained well, and you know they're just not the right fit for the brand.
Yep.
And I can't get excited about something. You know, if you can't look after your own house, I'm not going to get excited about it. So that's the way I look at it. And
well, I find it's very similar that with corporates, mate. And the corporate model is very is a good example of this. Like because again, we've been there. You are challenged to get as many houses as you can each month and sell as many as you can. So that's why fee deals get done and stuff like that. But in reality, if you're a busy agent in corporate, not digging anybody out here, but this is what my experience is, you end up taking on too many houses. You can't service the clients, and then a percentage of your clients each month will get pissed off because you're not having regular reviews and they're not getting any interest and they're asking why. So your responsibility to me is to give that client your best efforts and experience. And if in your heart of hearts you can't get up for marketing that home, you're probably not the right person for them. If you're going in there and you just think, do you know what, I'm going to send a stylist in here, it's going to take all day, I'm not going to be able to photograph it very well, and then you're walking away thinking, why did we take it? Then you're not doing the best for that client. Whereas somebody else might come around with a better attitude than you because you've got a terrible attitude, JK. So everything, not just this, life. You're a horrible man. Sorry, that's what I'm a tangent then. But somebody comes along and that's their style of house, you know what I mean? Great, good luck to them. But I think it's all about, it's about setting your business up for success for a start. You've got to become known for something. And we've talked to death about this, but there's no point selling the flat above a chippy, as you say, JK, and the 6-bed barn conversion. You're never, ever going to get that consistency. You just can't. And again, obviously, as you know, we've got 2 brands, but I speak to people, if they're in a £500,000 house and they've invited me out on Burton James and the house is okay, I often say to them, just for transparency, I can't really do what I do on Burton James because there's no marketing budget there, I'm honest. I'd have to charge you a stupid amount. There's no marketing budget to do what I need to do. So actually, you're probably better off on the other brand anywhere where I'm not.
Well, I went to one recently this week that I wouldn't normally go to, but it was a client's daughter. I thought, I'll go. Because I knew it was modernised. It had been on the market with another estate agent and it hadn't sold. So I'd seen the photographs and it's like a mint sort of 1990s 4-bed detached kind of house. Like 1,200 square feet. Not that big, but it was in really good nick. So I thought, I'll go to it. And as I was driving there, I thought, fuck, it backs onto... it's one of the ones that backs onto the bypass, and it backs onto the A556, like right behind the garden is a main A road. Dual
Nice garden.
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, we don't
Nice
notice the road. People say, it's funny, when you live here, you really don't notice the road.
What? Road, don't notice it.
So it's left me thinking, it's 350 grams, 2%. You know, the sort of houses I would sell because they're decent, you know, but you think, oh, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. Now, if I say to them that you don't need to pay us, you know, it's hard because of the road, you're better off using another agent. I don't really mean that because I know that if I was selling it, I would negotiate more for her than another agent would. So I know that it's not the right thing for her to do, really. But then on the flip side, I don't really want it because it'll take forever. And we're already booking our next shoots. Our next available shoots now are like mid-June.
Yeah.
We've got lined up loads of £1 million plus properties and we can't get them in. So
that's the thing, though. You know, you've got to be selfish. We did this the other day as well. We had a valuation request on a 1-bedroom cottage. Lovely. But the reality is there's a few compromises with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, our minimum fee is £8,000 plus VAT. You know, this cottage is going to be £2,000, so 200 and something grand. You know, we wouldn't feel right charging you nearly 4% to sell it. So, you know, maybe we're not the best option for you. And it's a nice way to get out of it. I just, like I say, you've got to be passionate about what you're selling. But also, you choose which end of the market you want to operate in. If you want to operate in the mid to high end of the market, you know, you've got to get up for doing, and you're geared for doing that. I'm trying to think of an analogy in my head. You know what I'm like with analogies. But you know, you wouldn't try and stay in, I don't know, the Ritz for, you know, Premier Inn prices. It doesn't happen, does it? You either want the Ritz or you want the Premier Inn. Which one are you? You know, and that's nothing against Premier Inn because I've stayed in plenty, but it's just. So go on.
I was just going to say, sorry, JK. I mean, we're probably skirting around it a little bit, but the reality is, you don't have to take these houses on.
No, you don't.
It's your time, it's your money, and if you are consistently attracting houses that you don't want, you need to change something. Simple as that. And the reason people listen to this podcast and the reason that people join TCA is because they want to get into the mid to higher end. Why do they want to get into the mid to higher end? Well, let's be quite honest. The finances are much better. They are. So you don't have to take everything on. You know, if your client is offended by the fact that you don't want to take their property on, then you probably shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't really get invited out to stuff that's not befitting of the brand. If anything, people say to us now, "Oh, right, would you sell a house like that?" You know, if they're viewing it, like, because sometimes they'll say, you know, I spoke to somebody yesterday, and he doesn't know about my other brand, but he's made an offer on one of our houses, subject to the sale of his own. He said, "Yeah, I've had some valuations done, and da 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 da." I said, "All right, would you want me to come and have a look at yours?" And he said, "Oh, I don't think it's one that you'd sell." And it's actually a nice compliment. And obviously, once I told him what I do, and we've got another brand, etc., etc., it's a different conversation, but. That's what it attracts. Burton James attracts that. JK attracts that. Stories attracts that. You know, and the people that are selling the £3.5 million house that you've got, Ian, are not shopping at the bottom end of the market with purple bricks and stuff. So you've got to. I mean, at the risk of sounding like we're going backwards on a mini series and things like that, you've got to look like what you want to become, really. So, and you've got to look like what you want to attract, rather. So, it's you don't have to do it. Like I say, it's like the dreaded friend request, isn't it? Your friend rings you up. "Hiya, JK, I want to sell my house and I want you to do it for me." And you're like, "Oh, right." He's going to want a fee deal. He expects me to charge him 0.5% off. I've had one actually this week, in the last 2 weeks rather, and it's a land one. It's a land deal where he's got a decent plot and it could have a couple of really nice homes on it. But the expectations for what they can achieve for that are miles out. And I know this person reasonably well, lives in my area and stuff. And I met him last year and I told him what I thought the plots were worth. And just, I mean, they're worth about 150,000 a piece. There's two of them. So 300,000 in total. So you can already see, for me, for the time and effort that I'm going to have to put into that, I'm probably not going to be able to give him what he needs. And to be quite frank, it's not worth the time, because ultimately, if I'm spending hours on these on the advertising, it's hours that I could be spending at a house that will pay us 2% at the higher end. It's just a fact of life. So I'd said to him, those are the numbers. He thought they were worth more, and he said, "I'm going to try it with somebody else who's valued it higher." We're now a year on. He's not sold them, and he's come back to me and said, "Oh, you're right. Listen, will you put your amazing marketing spin on it?" And I've politely had to say to him this week, "No, I can't do it.
No,
I don't have the time. I can't charge you what you probably want to pay. I'm not the right person for you." I've done it politely in a structured way, and I've helped him, and I've given him all the comps and stuff like that. And I've given him honest advice. I went as far as getting a builder's quote for him based on what a developer looks at and how they would price it and why it's not worth the money. So I've really helped him. I just can't help with the sale, because the amount of time and effort that I have to put into that, it's just not worth my time and effort. So I think people have got to get real. If you want to start attracting better homes and charging higher fees, then look like what you want to attract. That's going backwards. Let's talk about just quickly on vals, lads. I think we've got another 5 or 10 minutes, haven't we? Obviously, we want to try and help with anybody's listening with valuations and maybe overcoming. There's a bit of overlap, isn't there? There's the valuation itself, what you do to prepare and win valuation, how fast you follow up, all that sort of stuff. And then just thinking about questions in our group this week about lack of interest and things like that, about approaching conversations in a certain way. I always, just with any slow stock, just one thing that just came to my mind then. I always say to people now on reviews, like when I first came to see you, it was X pound per square foot, and this is where we thought the data sat. If it's their number, we now need to come down to my number. Or even if it was my number and it's not working out, well, it's not my fault. It's just that's what the market was telling me. And my line is, we've now got the benefit of experience. You've been on the market for a few months, so we can see what the market's doing, and we can see how everybody else is performing around you, and nothing else is selling either. So we now have the benefit of experience. We can either use that positively, or we can carry on doing what we're doing, and you can get no interest and not sell. So you either have to lower your expectations or carry on as we are and wait for the market to catch up with you, and there's no guarantees with that. So I think that's one way you can address that sort of thing. But what about valuations, lads? What are you doing now that perhaps that you weren't doing 12 months ago, 18 months ago? Before we came on, I told you about different conversations I'm having, and I think they change. And one of the things that I find with a lot of agents that I speak to, and I remember from my corporate days, they become very robotic. And I always used to remember speaking to people who used to work with me when I was certainly in my corporate days, and they'd go on a run of losing valuations, and it was we'd sit down and we'd have a bit of a reset. And we've all been there. We've all lost a run of valuations and stuff. And I think sometimes you have to sit down and be honest with yourself and go through your pitch and say, right, what am I not doing on these valuations? And I think what you can sometimes be guilty of is becoming complacent and just becoming a bit robotic, saying the same things at every valuation, and it's not hitting the spot with every client because every client's different. And I think you what I often found sometimes is I was spending too much time perhaps building rapport. We've obviously had the famous dog story that I told you about. Building rapport and then just taking it for granted, but not actually getting into the detail of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to sell it, that kind of thing. Not running through test cases, and then coming back thinking I'm going to win it, and they go, yeah, we've decided to go with such a body. I'm like, oh wow, what have I not done in that valuation? Because I thought it was nailed on. So what about you guys? How are you structuring things? Let's talk to you, JK. You're itching to speak there.
Yeah, so I'm relatively fluid. I mean, listen to you guys. Before we'd obviously had a debate a long time ago about what you should do first. Should you go in and sit down first? Should you go to look round first? And I was always very much before, look round first, so then you know what you're seeing. But then obviously everyone else does that. So the immediate benefit from sitting down first is a little bit of a pattern interrupt. But also you can gauge whether you need to be there for 15 minutes, whether you need to be there for an hour and a half. by having the chat first. And I'm relatively fluid. So one of the things I say, and I say word for word almost yesterday, was, what's your motivation? We've spoke over the phone. You said that you're possibly looking at your options. You're not quite sure what you're going to do yet. Why am I here? What's been the catalyst of, the conversation about moving house? And, they said yesterday, well, we feel like we've got another move in us. We're not sure where we want to be yet. And I said, okay, great. Well, what areas have you explored? Have you viewed anything? And one of the I suppose, golden lines that I've used is, have you seen anything on Rightmove, or have you viewed anything that you would have bought? And then yesterday they said, oh, well, we viewed such and such.
Can I pause there? That is a great question. Just say that again.
I said, have you seen anything on Rightmove, or have you physically viewed anything that you would have bought so far if you're on the market and sold?
Can we just dissect that a little minute? Because I think it's such a brilliant question that I bet a lot of people don't use. Because this then leads into, it's not just for the valuation, by the way. This is something that your team members can use on the phone. Because what is the classic that you get now? You've just put a new house on the market. Hi, can I view Grain Lodge, please? Yeah, no problem. What's your name? Can I take your address? What's your situation at the moment? I said, right, yeah, we need to sell. Okay, have you had any valuations yet? No. We want to find before we sell. So I think that is a really good lead-in to probably what you were going to assess there, motivation. But to ask that question is, right, so if they then say, oh yeah, we've seen 2 or 3, and they've either missed out on them or not yet seen them, that's where you can get into, right, we've got options for you here, which is like obviously going to be, you need to get your house valued, we could get your market ready. It's another lead-in. Just thought it was a great question, JK. I don't know whether you want to elaborate on it or just carry on.
Yeah, all I was going to say is that you had that conversation with people, and then I suppose you because the thing is, people love talking about themselves and love talking about their interests and hopes and aspirations. They don't want to hear a sales pitch from you for 2 hours, and it's so why was that house a good fit for you? What was it about that house that this house didn't have? And then you really start breaking down into that motivation. Well, it's got the big kitchen dining room, it's got a bigger plot, it's got this, it's got that. And you're like, right, okay, so these are all the things that you're after, and this is why you're looking to move. Yeah, that's right. Oh, we hadn't really thought about that. You you're asking them the questions, teasing out of them what it actually is that they want. You write that down. And then it's like, right, okay, great. Well, now we've kind of established what and why. Let's have a look around. So then, we do the walk around and this, that, and the other. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Why you would want to do this. You could do that. And she said, oh, do you think it would be worth extending this house, to get that kitchen diner? And I said, well, look, if you're looking to stay here for the next 20 years, then why not? But if you spend 150k on this house, it's not going to be worth, this is the 700k house. It's not going to be worth 850. Because in the nicest way, it's still Acacia Road. It's never going to break. The ceiling for this road is probably 750. And even if you do an amazing job, it's still going to be what it is. So why not put that 150k in to moving and getting what you want and buying the dream house and stepping up? Because it's just, you've got 6 to 12 months full of brick and dust. And yes, it will pay off. But it sounds to me like, you've naturally outgrown this house and you just need to take that next step up. And, ultimately on the flip side, if you really love where you are and you can't see yourself ever moving and the neighbours you're going to stay that way forever and yada, 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 then do it. If that's what you want, that's for you. Then
Can I just pick up on something there as well? Going back to JK, just for obviously, you sort of move forward a little bit then, but I think it's something that you can jump in with as well, Ian. But I think the structure of the val there that you talked about is key, and you actually said something that even though it's absolutely natural to me, you, Ian, maybe, I'm not convinced many do it properly. I'm really not. Because I often get feedback from homeowners that say, it was only here 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I get that a lot. The other party. And one thing I think is really important is the building rapport bit. I like to have the sit down first if we talk about structure of the val. But you mentioned something really just skimmed over it. But you write that down. You said you'd asked her that night that question about had she seen anything yet that she was very interested in. and you get the feedback and you write it down. I'm not convinced people do that.
No.
I don't think people do sit down and take a load of notes. Like I have a pad that I take with me to every val, and all my notes from every val that I've ever done are in this pad. And it is just as they're telling me stuff, I write it down, because I think it's good to throw things into the report. The names of children, the names of pets, what they've been doing recently, what their plans are, to recap, to really get them to understand that you've listened to their circumstances. So I think that's an important part of that structured val.
I think where other people go wrong is they treat a valuation like a valuation.
Yeah,
they do.
They go in and it's about valuing the house. And whenever you go out to a valuation, a valuation is probably 5% of why you're there. 95% of why you're there, you should be establishing why are they moving, what are their plans, and how can you help them. Come up with an anecdotal solution. And that's the other thing where anecdotal evidence comes in really well, and you can go, oh, right, well, and ironically, they sounded just like a carbon copy of my other clients. Oh, actually, you actually remind me of this client here. And I put the brochure on the table, and I was like, they did this, and he moved there, and he retired, and they were looking for this, and this didn't quite work out because they couldn't buy that, and this happened. And so everything you're saying to me here, I've done this playbook 100 times before. So you've got the benefit of my experience, so that when the time comes to do this, I say to people, I would like to do what's called a pre-mortem, and we always look at where you want to be, and then work back from everything that could go wrong or any challenges that we might face along the way, and talk about them up front. I always talk about averages. How long it would take to go under offer. The average time is 61 days. The average time to go from sale agreed to completion on average. And I was very keen to say that this isn't with us. This is just average in the market. 154 days from sale agreed to completion. And you're looking at 7 months, because a lot of people, they don't know about timescales, and I think a lot of agents don't know about timescales either. They almost set expectations where they come through the door, next week the photos are done, the week after they're under offer, and then within 3 months they're moved into their new house, when the reality is it's probably 7 months. And I always say you're only as fast as your slowest link in the chain. And that could be a leasehold property lower down from somebody that's offered and that we're managing within the chain, or the people you're buying from that are looking for a needle in a haystack, and it's all down to them trying to find the perfect house. So there's so many different moving parts throughout the chain, and we're here to help you navigate all of these potential challenges to get you to where you want to be, and to get that bigger kitchen, to get that bigger garden, to get that better location for the schools, etc. And I just find that I always get really good feedback on the meetings that I have, because it's never really about me. I must admit, having thought about it while we're talking about it now, I don't feel like I really sell what we do a lot of the time.
Yeah. I
don't sit there and make people watch a video. I don't sit there and say, we do this, we do that. I'll talk about, the thing is, I guess I kind of do and I don't. I throw it into conversation. So I'll say things like, we have a WhatsApp group, and this is what's going to happen in a WhatsApp group. So that fits in with this part of the story, and this is where it would kind of help you. I kind of, almost without selling, sell the solution to the problem that might come, and this is kind of how we overcome it. And I think when you present somebody with a high quality brochure, that they get it. They get what you do without you having to say, we have a professional photographer, we have a stylist, we have this, we have that. They can see the quality of what you've already sold. And to back it up, when you say, well, look, here's Stephen and Alison's house here. If you want to hear about their experience with us, they're more than happy to speak to you on the phone. I can give you their number. If you want to speak to David and Ian about their experience, here's their number. It's kind of building social proof. But then also, because we don't tie people into a 5, 6, 7, 8 month contract, they're almost like, well, I can't really lose by using these guys. So, my pitch is, I think you have to be careful about the language sometimes, because the public's language and perception is to book a valuation, because that's what you do when you sell your house. You book a valuation. But it really is more of a sales consultation. It's a consultation about, or moving consultation. I know Perry likes to call it a selling advice meeting or property advice meeting. And that's totally what it is. But it's not just about property advice. It's about their lives and their move. So, it's more of a moving advice meeting, if that makes sense, or consultation, however it is you want to frame it. And that's what I do first thing I do when I sit down. I appreciate I've gone on for 10 minutes now, but that's what I do when I meet people. I talk to them. What's your plans? What's your aspirations? Again, asking the right sort of questions. And I don't know if you guys have read the book by Phil M. Jones, the Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. But there's some really good lines in there, especially for when you're just speaking to sellers about like reductions, for example, when you're doing market updates. A really good piece of language that he preaches in the book is, are you open-minded?
Yeah.
So, if you've got a house on at 900 and it's not going anywhere and you realistically need to get down to 8, the conversation will go along the lines of, well, are you open-minded if, to changing the strategy on price? And, what does it look like if somebody offers you 825, 830?
It's a good question. Are you open-minded is a good question, isn't it?
And the reason it's such a great question, and he contextualizes it in the book, is that everyone likes to see themselves as open-minded. No matter what question you ask, it's, people from a perception point of view want to see themselves as open-minded. So, even when you're going on a val and, they want 1.25, 1.3 or 1.4, are you open-minded to try and offers over 1.25, to see if we can get to 1.3, 1.4, and then back that up with anecdotal evidence to go, well, look, we launched this at 1.25. Clients there are open-minded to try and a strategy. We got back-to-back viewings. We sold it at nearly 1.4. How does that sound? And they're the kind of things I do. So I appreciate, sorry, you asked me a question. I thought it was going to take 2 minutes, and here we are in 2028.
No, I think you're right, though. I mean, look, for me, structure's key. Build rapport, take notes, do the walk round, and then, once you get into it, the prep of the val sort of stuff. We've sort of skipped the prep of the val, which we'll maybe go through on another pod. But
I have something to say as well, if I'm allowed to speak. So what I found increasingly with us recently is that it's a Tom Panos phrase, but that we've become an attraction agent. So a lot of the vals, I call them vals, Perry would shoot me, but you know what I mean, I go to, people already know. Like, they've either got friends that have used us, or they know they love what we do. They love the brochures, they love the videos, they love the marketing. They know that the service has been really good. They've had a good recommendation from people. And I've been to so many of those recently where they may be having 2 agents because they want to just test, they want to just corroborate the price, but they've already decided to go with us before I even walk in the door. I've had that a lot recently.
Nice. Yeah.
And and especially above $1 million, I think it works way better at the higher end because they're so well connected and they know that they can't just use, they know they don't just want to use the scruffy estate agent in town that's got a 1980 sign outside. They know they need something special for their nice house. And we're like, and I know you two are with your brands as well, we're like the sort of modern day local Savills, I kind of think. Like higher end, but we're local. Like, I live around the corner and my kids go to school in 10 minutes away. But yet we've got this profile of selling higher end stuff. So I like to think of us like that. And I know you two are the same. A couple of things I was going to mention on vals was I like to try and have 2 points of data to corroborate the price. So those 2 points of data will be pound per square foot. And within the pound per square foot, I do take a best price guide because they look good, but I always annotate, I always write next to each property with I've got one of these pens, I got it off Dave, where you've got red, blue, black and green.
Yes. So
I do different colours for the pound per square foot, and I'll change the colour and write 10 acres, change the colour and write it's got a pool. So it looks like I've really been doing my homework on it. It looks kind of real, which I think goes down really, really well with people, and you can talk them through that. So I'll highlight, well, that one had 1 acre, that one had 5, that one had a pool, that one had stables, that one's 4,000 square feet, that one's 3,000. And you can show how some get a higher or lower pound per square foot than others, and you can try and line their property up with those comparable properties. And that goes down really, really well. You can talk people through the sort of science of it. So one of the data points is pound per square foot. The other data point is the increase since they bought it, if it's in the last, 20 years or so, 25 years. But even I've been to somebody recently where they've only been in it 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, and you can really show what it's done. And if those two in any way line up, then that's brilliant, because the data is proving the valuation, not you. So I'm really trying to have more than one data point to corroborate the marketing price. And then obviously on top of that, you're talking through your 16-step plan, and you're talking about price to entice, and get it on the right big price point and all those things as well. But so much of the appointment is sitting down talking about them, isn't it? I do run through the plan generally, although I've been to quite a few recently as well where they say I've read it all. I've read your plan. I think it's brilliant. But I still try and touch on a few points, because you can get it across better, can't you, than the plan can by itself. Yeah. They're the sort of things I'm doing on Vals. But the majority of stuff I go to now is like north of 800, I would say. North of 800, 900. So really nice point in the market. And it's people who really appreciate data. Like one I went to last week, they're both consultant doctors in the NHS. Yeah. He's like manager of a major local hospital, and she's like a consultant pediatrician. So I go to so many where the clients are like high level professional people, or they're entrepreneurial types, aren't they? So the 3.5 million one that we've just sold for way over, he's an entrepreneurial type, growing businesses. And I just love dealing with those people, because you can have banter with them when you're confident and you've got a bit of maturity. Yeah. Banter with them. You can tell them what they need to hear. I go in today I'm wearing a jumper and white trainers and black jeans. Yeah. And it's so refreshing for them. The amount of ones I've been to where they'll say, oh God, the last guy, he was just your typical estate agent, shiny, stripy tie, long coat.
Max von Wrigglesworth.
We've got to do this for our property. Simon Chappleton Smythe.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps with questions on Vals.
Yeah. All good stuff, that, mate.
I think there's been some gold there. I think it's probably a good place to leave it now.
Yes, absolutely. No, well, listen, it was good. We've got what? Can we quickly just touch on Mastermind? When is it?
June.
Is it? Wow, yeah. So we've got another Mastermind in a month. It's taking place in Manchester, and if you want to learn a bit more about TCA and you want to be potentially even attend that Mastermind, please let us know, Ian.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, that we've got another training piece, haven't we? The next Mastermind, like we had at the last one, but this one's going to be mindset and team training. So really good piece all around your mindset. So achieving high fees. We've had a couple of members, haven't we, talk about fees. It's a very common subject in the industry. And then also a bit of training around your team and how you can bring your team up to where you want them to be. And that's going to be delivered by someone who's got years of experience in agency and in coaching corporate companies.
Years of experience.
Years.
No, it sounded like a year to me then. So I'm just make it clear. It's years and years and years.
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 Years on years.
Years of what? Right. On that bombshell, thank you so much for listening to us, and we will see you next week.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening.